Good Friday evening, everyone. I want to jump into it right now and look at a very active tropics that we have. We have Category 4 Hurricane Hilary here in the Eastern Pacific, and then we have four different areas to watch in the Atlantic, including one that may potentially have an impact along the Texas or maybe northern Mexico Gulf Coast. So let's jump in and take a look at satellite right now. Certainly here we can see in the Eastern Pacific, we have Hurricane Hilary, powerful Category 4 storm here spinning off the western coast of Mexico. This storm is going to move northward along Baja California and up into the desert Southwest and Southern California here over the next couple days. And so we are going to see pretty significant threats to Baja California and then also the southwestern U.S. Now, right now, we're not looking at some sort of a hurricane landfall in California or anything like that. It is going to weaken as it moves further north. Some of this Pacific water is certainly cooler than where it resides right now. But we do actually have, for the first time ever, tropical storm warning for Southern California. So conditions will be very possibly tropical storm force. So winds and certainly heavy rainfall, mainly Sunday afternoon into much of Monday. And we do have a pretty significant risk of a lot of rainfall and even flash flooding and mudslides in Southern California and Nevada and certainly parts of Arizona as well. So certainly from a tropical cyclone standpoint, Baja California is really going to feel the impacts of Hurricane Hilary. Again, further up into the United States, going to be more of a rain and flash flooding event, not so much a tropical cyclone. But again, it is the first time ever that we've seen a tropical storm watch out for Southern California, first time in recorded history. So that's pretty significant. Obviously, Hurricane Hilary is nothing to mess with. This is a really, really strong storm. Interesting to note here, we have obviously this big dome of high pressure here across much of the southern U.S., especially Texas and Oklahoma and these areas. You can kind of notice here in the satellite, we have this convection kind of going up around the mountains and around the high pressure here. And then you can also see that it kind of loops down here across the southeast. And we actually have some smoke and a lot of haze that's actually present here across Oklahoma, eastern Kansas, and much of kind of northeastern Texas. Leaving my house this morning going to work, I noticed that it was really, really hazy on the horizon. It was a real orange sunrise. And I thought to myself, man, there has to be some sort of smoke in the air. And a lot of the smoke is actually from way up north with those wildfires that have been plaguing much of Western Canada. And so they've made it all the way down here, and that's what's kind of causing the hazy scene that you might see across North Texas. Last thing worth noting here on the visible satellite that's going to be important is you can see this line of clouds here across the eastern part of off the eastern coast, and then also across the Gulf of Mexico. And so this is a stalled frontal boundary here. And so this is going to play a role in the potential threat across the Gulf Coast here over the coming days. We've got a little bit of a wave here across the Bahamas and Cuba. This is going to continue to move northwest here over the coming days and over the weekend, and potentially may interact with this frontal boundary and could spin up certainly even a tropical cyclone. Now, again, probably not going to have enough time over the Gulf of Mexico, even though it's favorable and certainly the Gulf is very, very warm. Probably not going to have enough time to really strengthen that much. So we'll probably be looking at more of a rainfall event. Maybe it's an organized tropical depression or tropical storm, but not very likely that it would be a hurricane or anything. But it does look likely that either northern Mexico or somewhere along the Texas coast could be the area that's under the gun. So do want to take a look at what the National Hurricane Center has to say about Hurricane Hilary, certainly. So this is as of the 6 p.m. Mountain Time advisory. So we've got Hilary at 130 miles an hour of sustained winds. That's a Category 4 hurricane. The Saffir-Simpson scale goes from basically a tropical depression all the way to a Category 5. So this is a very significant hurricane here. It's generally going to move off to the north, a little bit northwest here over the coming days. Likely going to weaken sometime maybe tomorrow into early Sunday. It'll still be a hurricane as it impacts the Baja California part of Mexico. And then again, as we can see, this little yellow here, as well as that S, means that likely it will still be tropical storm strength as it impacts Southern California. So, pretty historic event setting up here. As much as this is obviously a cyclone, and I think we think of winds, that's not going to be the primary threat up here in the Southwest and in Southern California. And so what we're going to be looking at for that is really the impact of the significant rainfall. We actually already have some flash flood warnings across Southern California right now. And some of these weather models are predicting anywhere from 4 to 10 inches of rain across kind of the southern third of California, typically east of the mountains here, as well as in parts of Nevada and even western Arizona as well. So significant rainfall event and also flash flooding. This is this pinkish purple category. This is a high risk that's pretty rare to see, especially in Southern California. It's the first time ever there's been a high risk for flash flooding east of the mountains here. And so definitely a very, very dangerous setup here across so much of California, Nevada, and even western Arizona over the coming days with just the sheer amount of rainfall that's likely going to be taking place with the remnants of Hurricane Hilary. So definitely take this seriously if you live here in the Southwest or in parts of Southern California. Definitely could be dangerous with flash flooding, and certainly mudslides will be a risk as well. Now, when we pivot a little bit and look at the Atlantic Ocean, we have these 4 different areas here that we can see on the map of possible development over the coming days. So we have one here kind of off the coast of Africa, not too far, another one here, one towards the Lesser Antilles, and then that wave here across Cuba and the Bahamas that will likely move west into the western Gulf of Mexico. And so with each of these, we do have certainly a threat of development. More serious one and more immediate would be this furthest east one. Likely these, at least these 2 eastern ones, will likely kind of move off into the open Atlantic here as we move forward in time. Probably not much of a threat to land. Certainly could see some possible hurricanes, if not at least tropical storms. But again, probably over the open water. This storm here, there's a little bit of disagreement between models that I'll show in a minute. Likely going to impact certainly the Lesser Antilles, Hispaniola, Puerto Rico. A little bit of kind of indecision on exactly where this may move from here. So it's still too early to tell, but could be an impact to the United States. So we'll have to keep watching. And then lastly, this one here, again, this wave is going to move, kind of interact with that stalled front here across the Gulf of Mexico, and could develop here across the Western Gulf, and then look to move inland either across maybe northern Mexico or somewhere along the Texas coast, probably late Monday all the way to maybe Wednesday timeframe here this next week. So this is probably the biggest immediate thing that's worth watching for interests in the United States, and especially along the western Gulf Coast. But again, so actually a very, very active pattern with 4 different possible cyclones that could develop here over the coming days. So very important to watch that. When we look at some of the models here and what they're projecting, again, we've got this system that's very likely to develop in the next day or so here, kind of coming off of Africa. We have another one kind of out in the open Atlantic. Then again, this one over the Lesser Antilles and Hispaniola, some of it shows more of a western track, whereas some of it starts to curve kind of off to the north and then likely into the open Atlantic. If it takes a southern approach here, this could get into the Caribbean certainly and start to move towards the United States. And then lastly, obviously, we have a pretty good consensus on this model run of some sort of low pressure and spin developing here in the Western Gulf, and then moving again somewhere into the Texas coastline, probably between Brownsville and Corpus Christi somewhere. So certainly very, very active setup, not only in the Pacific, but also in the Atlantic right now. The big focus is on Hurricane Hilary and the impact to the southwestern U.S. here over the next 48 hours or so. But then I think all eyes will turn to the Atlantic Ocean, and we're not even to the peak of hurricane season, so we're really just getting started. So hope everybody has a good rest of your Friday and a good weekend, and I hope this update was helpful, and I'll see you back here for the next video.